Welcome to Gardening with Ben, the podcast where we dig into the soil of our gardens and the depths of our green thumbs. I'm your host Ben, here to guide you through the joys of gardening, from sowing seeds to reaping bountiful harvests. Each episode will explore tips, tricks and tales from the garden and allotment, sharing insights from ourselves and stories from our own back garden adventures. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just getting your hands dirty for the first time, there's something here for everyone. So grab your brew and gardening gloves and let's get growing with Gardening with Ben. Hello and welcome to Gardening for the Mind, the podcast where we cultivate not just our gardens but also our mental well-being. In this space we explore the tranquil and therapeutic power of gardening and how it entwines with our mental health. This episode is a journey through a soothing world of plants and nature, uncovering how the simple act of gardening can nurture our minds, uplift our spirits and bring harmony to our lives. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just starting to plant your first seed, join us as we delve into the calming and restorative effects of connecting with the earth. Let's grow a garden together. Now let's turn the soil and turn our minds into peace. So welcome to this episode of Gardening with Ben. I hope you're all enjoying these episodes this week. We're having quite a few pre-recorded so that you've got episodes popping out regularly for you all to listen to. So yesterday we talked about the best garden magazines out there to read and the benefits of behind the garden magazines. So if you've not listened to that episode, make sure you do have a listen. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about mental health and gardening. And this is something that's very close to my heart because I do struggle with mental health and I'm openly saying that. And yeah, I do struggle a lot, and the mental health side of it is that I struggle with is a lot of the time loneliness and living on my own and not seeing many people, and I struggle around that. And that's one of the reasons why I go on TikTok a lot, going live on there so that I can chat to people and see people, or I'll often go out to the pub just so that I'm not in the flat on my own, as it does get lonely being on your own. And one thing that does help with my mental health is going to my allotment, going to my garden. I haven't got a garden myself, but I've got my allotment, so it's like 10-15 minutes drive and I'm at my allotment. And one of the things that was when I moved out from my parents is whether I wanted to carry on having my allotment, even though I'd have to commute further to get there. And that was one reason behind it. I didn't want to give it up because it's that open space, that open bit of land where I can just go and enjoy being out in the fresh air. And obviously I work shifts, so I work night shifts a lot, so sometimes I won't go out for like 4 days because I'm on night shifts and I'll only see the dark, because by the time I wake up it's dark again, and when I'm going to bed it's dark, so all I'll see is dark, which isn't very good for the mental health and for the mind. So that's one of the reasons why I do love having my allotment, is because obviously I'm outside in the fresh air and I'm at peace with the birds around me, and there's nothing better than being in the garden, listening to the birds, looking at all the wildlife, seeing the new things what are popping through the ground. Even if it's a weed, you're seeing new bursts of life coming through into the garden, and it does help your mind a lot. And gardening is so good for my mental health. I can't believe how much it does help. Once you've been out in the garden, been out in the allotment for an hour, your mind certainly does feel a lot better because you switch off when you're gardening. You're just digging away, feeling for the worms. And if you're like me, I like to do gardening barehanded. I never like to have gloves on. I like to get the soil between my fingers, and even if they do get mucky and filthy, I like to get my hands in the soil. And there are studies that it is good using just your bare hands for digging and getting them into the soil. And obviously gardening is good for stress relief and relieving that stress, whether it's hitting wood into the ground, whether it's even if you're getting a bit frustrated, just get a hammer out and smash some wood up or just dig some ground up. It's a good de-stressor being out in the garden. And obviously there's now certain things that you can do. You can have sensory gardens with special sensory equipment and stimulations which help all the five senses for mental health benefits. So if that's something that you want to look at sensory garden information online. It's not something that I know about. I hopefully need to start looking about a sensory garden stuff. That'd be very interesting for me and what benefits it can do for you. Maybe that's something I need to start looking into and doing it more. And obviously, when you're growing your own fruit and vegetables as well, you're growing fresh produce and healthy produce is also good for the brain and for the mind and stuff like that. As obviously, I've also one of the times I went to the doctors and I thought I was struggling a lot, and they said it was because I've got low folic acid, and that can affect the brain and the well-being. And they said to start eating more green broccoli and stuff like that. So growing your own produce helps that way as well, and it's good for stuff like that. It can even help with your anxiety and depression because, like I say, you just switch off when you're down at the allotment. You just turn off. I've got my music listening to, I've got my favourite tracks, and I'm not thinking about anything when I'm gardening. My mind just switches off. I'm like in a different zone. It's a bit like meditation, a bit like yoga. You switch off when you're doing it, you open your mind, and you just listen to the nature around you. And that's why I tend to go to the allotment as much as I do. And sometimes I don't even do any gardening when I'm down at the allotment. I'll admit that. Sometimes I don't do anything. I'm just sat there on my nice new chair, which I've purchased, and sitting in my new seating area, just sitting there, just watching the allotment and just looking around and taking in all the nice colours and all the beautiful things around me, seeing all the bees flying around. I've put my bird feeders up so it's attracting the birds to it. I can just sit there and look and enjoy them. So if you do struggle with your mental health, try and attract that wildlife to your allotment. I've spoke about it in one of my podcasts. Try and attract some wildlife to your plot. And again, seeing all the different wildlife pop into your allotment while you sat there just looking, it amazes me. And we've got the big bird count coming up as well, the big bird watch coming up soon. So the more birds that you're starting to get into your plot, you can help count them birds and submit them to the RSPCA, I think it is. But you can submit them. But yeah, without my allotment, I don't know what I'd do. If I didn't have my allotment, I'd just stay in my flat all day. I wouldn't do anything. Like I said in my podcast yesterday, I've not been to my allotment for a couple of days, so I've not left my flat. And it's awful. It's awful not going to your allotment. And the reason behind it is because it's freezing cold. I could have actually gone if I wanted to, but I thought it was freezing cold. I'll have a lie in, I'll stay in, I'll do some jobs at home, I'll record these podcasts. But yeah, it's awful not going out and not seeing anybody. So that it's so good. But I'll struggle with mental health probably for years to come. But the more that you can do to help it, the better you can do. So if you're struggling with mental health, get out in that garden, even if it's just for 15-20 minutes a day to do a bit of weeding or a bit of sweeping, or just going around touching the leaves and feeling for nature. It's definitely worthwhile. So yeah, I'll probably go a bit more into my mental health issues later on in the podcasts, but that's just a little area and a little insight into what I struggle with. It's not, I don't always talk about my mental health issues. I know we should do more. Even the doctors are looking at prescribing people onto gardening courses I've seen recently, getting them into gardening, because it is proven that gardening is good for the mental health. So watch this space. More and more people might be getting into it, and it's good that people are getting into it. And at the end of the day, like they always say, you get fresh produce from it as well. So keep trying, keep getting out in that garden, keep enjoying it, even if it's cold. Just go out in the garden for a bit, and remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben, everyone. And that wraps up another episode of Gardening with Ben. Thank you for joining me in this journey. Remember, every seed planted is a step towards a greener world, and every day is a chance to grow something beautiful. Keep nurturing your gardens and your souls. Until next time, I'm Gardening with Ben, reminding you to let your garden be your sanctuary. Happy gardening, and see you in the next episode. Remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben.